Hello friends, this is Anton and you are on the Blackroom channel. In this video, I will show and tell you about our latest and most powerful project called STINGRAY. Be sure to watch until the end, it will be super interesting. Based on the reference lineup from Alcon's Audio, Trinov, GVC, and all that, everything you love, everything we love. In order for the cinema room to truly be correct and be called a real cinema room from Blackroom, at the entrance you probably didn't notice, but there is undoubtedly a soundproof door, and not just any door, but one with completely different finishes. On the outside it is beautiful, carved in a classic style, while on the inside we have our curved design with a special acoustic diffuser in black finish. Even the seals in the contours are different, believe it or not. In other words, there are indeed a multitude of details here. But let's start from the beginning with the story. I will tell you everything about this room today, how it started to be created. In 2020, at the height of the pandemic, when everyone was allowed to move around, representatives of the client approached our company with the task of building a very good cinema room. By that time, they had visited almost all the showrooms in Moscow related to home cinemas, but our showroom at that moment, which was the old showroom, turned out to be the last in their series of trips. Following the visit of the client's representatives, the client himself arrived with his family. Essentially, there were no more questions. Another pleasant surprise for me personally was that the client had already subscribed to the Blackroom channel by that time and was following both our Instagram and our videos on YouTube. Therefore, implementing this project was doubly and even triply enjoyable. On one hand, it was incredibly pleasant, but on the other hand, the responsibility at that moment increased sharply. At the meeting, the client admitted that he loves movies, consumes them in large quantities, and has always dreamed of his own cinema room. And now, when he has the opportunity to build a house for his family, the first thing he definitely wants to have is a real home cinema. He said that he doesn't need a space, some millions of dollars, that's definitely not necessary. Just something cool, like you know how to do, will suit me just fine. Well, actually, we shook hands on it. And we started working. Our work always begins with design, as you well know, and based on the results of the design work, a project album was released that contained more than 110 pages. But in reality, everything always starts with the room. We have the initial data, which is usually a ready-made concrete room, and it was exactly the same here. But this time, the room turned out to be completely unusual and extraordinary. And, by the way, the client and his representatives had a big question. Is it even possible to achieve good sound in such a room, a proper cinema? Right now you can see an image of what the room plan looks like in the initial data. It is a very complex diamond shape, even with a small appendage, so to speak. Yes, it has 6 internal angles and even 1 external angle. So, it was an asymmetrical, strange room. The first thing we did, of course, was to make it symmetrical, bring it to an optimal appearance, allocate a separate space for the corridor, find a place for the equipment in this corridor, and also partition it off with a wall and install a door. Well, at the entrance, we ended up with 2 doors. One of them is our powerful acoustic door, the other is the regular one, which is actually the same as the doors throughout the house on the basement level. This gives us confidence that our sound insulation shell along with the door will definitely work. And we will not disturb any of the sleeping household members on the upper floors. Accordingly, what planning solutions did we implement? We symmetricalized the room, as I mentioned, and cut off a little bit from it because these so-called ears of the slope are actually unnecessary. They create unnecessary extra distant space. We trimmed it a bit too. As a result, we ended up with an octagon. And of course, they chose the largest wall to place the screen on, and accordingly, the baffle wall with the entire main acoustic system. As I mentioned, the client is a family man, and of course, he has many friends, so it was necessary to accommodate, as usual, the maximum number of seating places. And so, for this room in such a shape, we chose a layout of 2 rows, 2 curved rows of recliner chairs, with 5 chairs in each row, and they are arranged in the most stylish, comfortable, and convenient way, in terms of entering the room, filling the space, and angles to the screen. Accordingly, the area of the room was initially about 71 square meters, including this extension. When we separated it, we were left with approximately 61 square meters. Well, in terms of cleanliness, after we trimmed and created the sound insulation shell, we had about 55 meters left. But the room is so complex that you really have to make an effort just to calculate the area. One of the challenges was that there are real load-bearing beams in the ceiling which are necessary for the room to, well, actually stand, because there is a first floor above us, and the ceiling structure, along with these 2 beams that are not quite symmetrically placed, had to be taken into account. We had to work around them and arrange the cinema room's equipment, especially on the ceiling, considering these asymmetrical ceiling beams. After working out the planning solutions, we began developing the design, as it was extremely important here. The house had its own designer architect who already had certain concepts, but nevertheless we brought in our ideas on how to play with this complex space, making it as impressive and functional as possible at the same time. Before our designer starts working on creating this beauty, they receive initial data in the form of a three-dimensional model and properly arranged equipment. Because in our corner, performance is still the priority. In other words, the room must play and show. Therefore, we first place all the main components in ideal locations in the required quantities. We then provide this as initial data to the designer. The designer created 3 concepts like this for us, from which the client chose, in my opinion, the most appropriate, impressive, and cool option that truly now evokes a wow effect. We will talk about the design a bit later. Let's return to how everything was built. That is, we selected and agreed on the design, finishing materials, and then created the final visualization, taking into account the chosen finishing materials. And it turned out like this. And now look in comparison at how a real hall looks. Design, hall. 3D visualization. The hall. What do you think, friends? Does it look like we succeeded? Please write your opinion in the comments. Let's discuss. So, after the design was approved, we began developing all the elements of the project, all the details of the project, illustrated everything, and released a set of drawings. And they started implementing the project as soon as possible because the house was being built very quickly. By the time we arrived, there was literally 1.5 floors flooded. We took measurements when the water was still knee-deep here. But by the time the project was completed, it was already possible to start the sound insulation. And in fact, we began. Yes, it wasn't easy. Indeed, it was difficult. There were moments when we stayed there for a week because moisture started to accumulate, with real drops dripping from the ceiling since the house's outline had not yet been closed. In general, there are always enough complexities in construction, and I don't need to tell you this if you've ever built your own house. But there are indeed many challenges, and we managed to overcome all of them. First of all, of course, a sound insulation shell is created just like in any proper cinema room. Everything here was done using our proven classic technology with standard plastic materials at that time. The ceiling has a very complex shape because we have a lot of ventilation here. There is a box running around the perimeter everywhere here. These beams also needed to be soundproofed. And this projector box is soundproof, which needed to be integrated into the soundproof shell, raised as much as possible, and so on. So there are even several levels of soundproof ceiling here. All of this was done in a certain order with its own limitations and problems. However, everything came together, of course, because everything had been carefully thought out in advance. Part of the rough stage or sound insulation shell is this shaped podium, which also needed to be done as accurately as possible according to the project. We need to adhere to all these radii so that the chairs fit in here, so that they are positioned exactly without any unnecessary gaps and so on. The wooden podium is all made using our classic technology. By the way, we have videos on our channel about almost everything I am discussing today, including how we do sound insulation, how we make the podium, and how we usually handle ventilation in the cinema room. So if you haven't subscribed to the Blackroom channel yet, I urge you to do so right now, and then watch those videos that will immerse you and explain how not easy it is to create each element of a home cinema. I will leave all the links in the description of this video. And now we return to the STINGRAY cinema room. So accordingly, when the rough stage was ready, it included the podium, the screen wall with all the niches, the back wall, and the ceiling of the necessary shape. Accordingly, all communications had already been laid out by that time, meaning all wires, all acoustic, low voltage, and power cables for the seats and lighting were done at this initial rough stage. A few words about ventilation. Unfortunately, we couldn't integrate it into the podium. The podium has heating built in, and a couple of radiators were already planned here. We decided there was no point in muffling them, so we left them as is. In any case, everything is adjustable. But sound insulation is like a really cool thermos. And here, several walls actually border the ground. We found an elegant solution and integrated a couple of radiators directly into the podium. This way, they do not interfere with our movie viewing, do not create glare, do not distract, and do not obstruct comfortable walking on the carpet. They are built into the least used areas of the podium on the sides. The ventilation and air conditioning system has been implemented in the most correct way. A separate ventilation unit and a separate ducted air conditioner serve this room. All the air ducts enter the room in that part and ultimately land in various adapters and ventilation grills. They are distributed as evenly as possible throughout the room so that the air exchange occurs as correctly as possible. And here you can see how complex the entire ventilation system looks in our three-dimensional model. At Blackroom, we really care and are truly passionate about ensuring that you hear every nuance and every detail in your home cinema. And indeed, the concept that the director and sound engineer prepared for you when they were watching and mixing this film in their studios, in their screening rooms in Hollywood. Therefore, we pay special attention to the acoustic design of the room. And we should not confuse acoustic design with sound insulation because we have already completed the sound insulation with you. We have isolated this room from the outside world, made it quiet here, and ensured that sounds do not escape from it. The acoustic design is the next task to be addressed for the room and for the viewers inside this cinema. In order for the sound to be distributed as correctly as possible here, to have the necessary amount of reflections, to dampen unnecessary reflections, and to virtually create a more spacious sound, in other words, so that you feel like you are in a space that is not 50 square meters, but 100 or 150. That's when we really did our job well. For these tasks, we use various types and materials for finishing, and of course, specialized acoustic panels. Let's break down which finishing materials influence acoustic comfort. First of all, it is, of course, the carpet that we have as a standard in all home cinemas on the floor. It absorbs sound. This is a specialized sound-absorbing acoustic material that we placed in the necessary quantities, in the right proportions and locations on the walls and ceiling as soundproofing shells. In simple terms, these are acoustic absorbing panels, but they do not have a particularly attractive appearance. For example, we often use panels made from recycled cotton, which is a wonderful material that works excellently. When it is placed behind sound-transparent fabric, it continues to perform its function without being visually intrusive. We also have several standard acoustic panels that we manufacture ourselves and install in our projects. These are their hybrid panels, which partially absorb and partially diffuse sound. These are pure diffusers, and it is such panels that have taken their places here, similarly in the correct strategic locations on the walls behind the fabric. And on the ceiling, yes, don't be misled by the fact that our ceiling is a starry sky. We developed this ceiling ourselves, and this is not the first room we are making using this technology. The cinema room in Coperto has exactly the same one. We also filmed a review of the Coperto cinema room, by the way. And here we applied the same technology. These are panels made of acoustically transparent fabric into which a starry sky is embedded. It looks amazing. It's like a real Rolls-Royce, but it remains correct from an acoustic point of view. It allows all the necessary air to pass through, both in and out. Acoustic panels and materials as well as acoustic systems, meaning speakers, can be placed behind it, which is exactly what we did here. But that's not all. There is another wonderful element of decorative finishing that also has a very positive effect on the acoustics of the room. Right behind me you can see the three-dimensional 3D panels, which we used for the lower and upper parts of all 4 half columns in this room. The decorative half columns also serve an acoustic function, and the acoustic systems are hidden within them. The back wall is made of the same 3-dimensional panels. If we consider what influences the acoustics of the room, we must admit that the chairs upholstered in Alcantara also play a role, contributing some coefficient of sound absorption. And the people who will watch the movie also act as sound absorbers. We take all these components and elements into account in the project development because we have a whole dedicated section. It's called acoustic calculation. In it, we calculate the reverberation time, taking into account all the finishing materials and the required number of acoustic panels. Essentially, we compute and work through it. And if we happen to miscalculate something, we take preliminary measurements when all the finishing is in place. If, for example, the sound is too dampened, which is often the case, because some materials are unpredictable and unfortunately cannot be calculated precisely, we ensure that all the finishing in the room is removable. All the panels you see here, including the fabric panels and the ceiling panels, can be unclicked, allowing us to service the space behind the ceiling and walls and accordingly add or remove certain acoustic panels or materials. Well, accordingly, this fine acoustic tuning is done and the room is brought to perfection. It should be such that you want to be in it. You could spend hours here just passing the time, comfortably talking to each other, and accordingly not feeling muffled. This is very important because if you soundproof a room too much, you simply won't want to be in it. You'll start hearing your own pulse and will want to escape within 5 minutes of being there. Therefore, balance is such a key word. We strive to maintain it in all subsystems. And now we have reached the finishing touches, that is, all our beauty. The very design project that I promised to tell you about in more detail. Well, actually, we have an octagonal room, the so-called SCAD or STINGRAY in English. And to make it look cool and beautiful, our designer came up with the idea to place these pilasters or half columns here, which are decorated with 3-dimensional plaster panels. Our finishers worked on them for a considerable amount of time because everything is cut from standard elements, all joints are filled, and painted in several layers. Here it was manual, just well-detailed work as if, they were painting the walls of a church. I don't know, you can compare it to that. It's really a very delicate and detailed job so that everything turns into a single piece with a U-shaped framing of the half column. The back wall was painted several times to achieve its final appearance and integrity. All the walls are finished with fabric panels. This is an acoustically transparent fabric stretched over the corresponding grills by a frame, and all of them are snapped onto the walls with special fasteners. All of this can also be dismantled, as I mentioned before, to gain access to the equipment located behind this fabric, and if necessary, to adjust the acoustic design. And if you suddenly want to make some upgrades in the future, there will be no problems with that either. They removed part of the finishing, ran the necessary wires additionally, and you already have a new system, with new equipment or new additional channels. In general, the flexibility of the finishing is always maintained in our Blackroom projects. What else is there in the finishing? It's the baseboard that runs throughout the entire room. The baseboard is painted in matte black, made in the same way as the painted three-dimensional panels on the floor columns. On the ceiling, in addition to the starry sky, a spectacular starry sky, there is a wooden element running along the perimeter, in which all the ventilation grills are located. They are seamlessly integrated into the ceiling, painted with exactly the same paint as the wooden ceiling panels. And these two beams that we initially had in the room, which we soundproofed, we still maintained them here in this finishing, duplicating them with wooden decorative panels into which we integrated lighting. The spotlights are located around the entire perimeter of the room. And here in these beams, which divide the room in this way, the ceiling is a starry sky, our signature technology, not some ready-made solution that you can buy, just simple rectangular panels. In Europe, there is a single company. We do everything ourselves, and this allows us to make it custom, flexible, and integrated. It was really difficult to do this here because the windows that were left for the starry sky have a very complex shape. In order to correctly place 4 Dolby Atmos ceiling channel speakers in the necessary locations, we had to break this starry sky into separate panels in such a way that both the acoustics worked and the acoustic panels functioned, while also allowing for the creation of such a starry sky from these modular panels. In the end, everything came together, everything worked out, and it looks simply phenomenal. When you sit in the chair, turn off all the lights and leave the starry sky, you can just sit there, completely relax and meditate. The sky turned out to be simply magical. I allow a discussion about the room's finishing. I would like to mention that in that corner we have a built-in niche for future signal sources, such as a system box or PlayStation, when the clients decide to install it. It is integrated directly into the wall, and we just use the extra space that we cut from the unnecessary corners of the original slope. And on the floor there are beautiful decorative risers and steps that are illuminated. They are also finished with wood and painted with the same dark matte paint. A few words about the lighting because it is essentially part of the design. It serves decorative functions just like in any other cinema room. Here we have a total of 5 lighting groups, 5 groups of light. The first of them is the main light, which consists of spotlights that, as I mentioned, are located around the perimeter of the room and along the beams. The next group is decorative lighting, vertical lighting for all the pilasters or half columns. They are all illuminated on the left and right, and the back wall is also illuminated in the same way. All of this, of course, is dimmable. So the third group is the starry sky, which can be turned on and off, and when you turn it on, it starts to shimmer and beautifully twinkle and shine. The fourth group is the group of safe functional lighting, specifically the illumination of the steps, so that you can move around in the dark while watching a movie. At the most minimal level, it is enabled and you will never stumble here. You can comfortably ascend and exit the room if needed. And just as easily, you can go back. The fifth group is purely decorative. Lighting, a group of LED lights that illuminate the perimeter behind the screen. This is to ensure that your wow effect from this cinema room is even greater. Everything is controlled through KNX. The smart home system is present throughout the entire house. We also placed the decorative control panel on the grill, next to the other controls of the cinema room, right at the entrance. And of course, all these groups are connected to a universal control interface based on an iPad. You simply press the light and control the individual groups, dimming, turning on, and off. Now friends, let's talk about the audio and video system installed in this cinema room. The term reference is something I mention repeatedly in my videos, and here it is more relevant than ever, for the audio and video system that is installed and operating in the STINGRAY cinema. But first, let's discuss the video system. Accordingly, we have a video projector and a screen. The screen behind me, you can roughly understand the size, right? Well, I'll tell you, it's 170 inches wide, 430 something centimeters in meters. The screen format is 2.4:1, a widescreen Hollywood standard, in which most of the blockbusters are filmed. Unfortunately, we couldn't install a screen higher than the 16:9 format, which we would have liked due to the limited height of the ceilings. This was probably the most limiting factor, otherwise we would have definitely gone for it, but if we had placed it here, it would only fit without the frame in a tight space, from floor to ceiling, but as you know, Placing a projection image directly next to the floor, ceiling, or left and right walls is not good because it will cause glare. Therefore, the screen is a standard Hollywood widescreen Steward film screen, specifically the Wall Screen Deluxe with a sound transparent fabric surface of Harmony version 2. We have the exact same one in our showroom, but our screen is 16 by 9 and slightly narrower. The screen is not small, as you can understand, and a bright laser projector was needed to illuminate it. At that time, the top reference projector was the GVC's A1 with a brightness of 3000 lumens. It is he who has taken his honorable place in this soundproof box on a special retractable shelf. Everything is serviceable and opens with a special projection glass, so that nothing interferes with the great projection image. But there was actually a challenge here. We would have probably made the screen a bit larger if the geometry of the room had allowed it, as we were very limited in length. This was the only place where we could position the screen wall, so we pushed the projection box and the projector as far back as possible, ensuring that the edges of the screen were still illuminated. This was a challenge. I personally checked it about 5 times to see if we were hitting the mark. I even tested this projector in our showroom on our screen specifically to determine how wide it could project its beam. Nevertheless, we managed to get the entire screen illuminated from the front row. In the main viewing position, we achieved a horizontal angle of 58 to 59 degrees, which is an amazing, comfortable level for 4K images. From the second row, as you can see in the diagram from our project, it is 43 degrees. Until recently, this was one of the closest recommended angles for watching movies in Full HD, according to old standards when 4K was not yet available. Therefore, we ended up with 2 great figures for 4K and Full HD from the second row. Those who like to sit closer and enjoy a larger image can watch from the front row. Here is the reference image we received. But what about the sound? The sound is also handled by a reference line called CRMS from the Dutch company Alcon's Audio, of which we, Blackroom, are the official representative in the Russian Federation. This acoustics is what we have in our showroom, but here we went further. Here we have the reference upper line. In our showroom we have the lower one. Thus, this is the first room with reference acoustics from Alcon's Audio in our country. Let's break it down in more detail. Accordingly, behind the screen, we have, as usual, positioned everything as correctly as possible. Here is the center channel, with the left and right channels on the sides of the screen, and a biamping system CRMS. MK2 full biamping features a 15-inch woofer and an 8-inch mid-range driver. It is a 3-way acoustic system that is powered by 2 amplification channels. Here we use biamping. The low-frequency section with a 15-inch bass driver is powered by a single amplifier channel, and the high-frequency section, which consists of an 8-inch mid-bass driver, and a 4-inch professional Pro ribbon from Alcon's Audio. It is powered by another amplification channel. Thus, for the entire front group, 3 speakers are powered by as much as 1.5 amplifiers. 1.5 amplifiers from the same Alcon's Audio. I almost forgot to mention what configuration the audio system is. We have 9 speakers around us. We have 1 subwoofer channel, but there are actually 8 subwoofers. On the ceiling we have 4 channels. 9, 1, 4. 4 ceiling channels, and accordingly 8 subwoofers, which are placed as we like in the right strategic locations. 4 in the front and 4 in the back on the front and rear walls, positioned as symmetrically as possible in the quarters of the room. In this case, it is certainly difficult to call this room ideal for using this bass system, but nevertheless, it still works, and practice has proven that such properly positioned 8 subwoofers allow you to tune a smooth, rich bass throughout the entire listening area. That's why I said delicious, because the subwoofers here range from the Blackroom company to our own production subwoofers, which we offer as a standard in any of our home cinema projects because they provide that delicious sound and have very convenient dimensions for installation behind the screen wall or the back wall, so they can be hidden without significantly affecting the geometry of the room. There are 8 such subwoofers, so it's correct to refer to this audio system configuration as 914 with 8 subwoofers, or for simplicity, 984. The surround channels are evenly distributed around the entire viewing area. The white channels are located in the first 2 half columns next to the screen. There, we use the CRMS SR model. This is a reference surround from the same high-end line as the front channel. Accordingly, the side surround speakers are built into the next 2 half columns that follow the first ones. That is, the second 2 half columns. In the back walls next to the subwoofers, we have built-in rear back surround channels, which accordingly use the same models from the reference line CRMS. On the ceiling, we have 4 channels with a significantly wider dispersion. The surround has a 90 by 40 degree opening angle for high frequencies, and on the ceiling we have compact series speakers that fit into this low ceiling and have a significantly wider opening angle with a special waveguide of 120 by 90. These channels again were quite difficult to integrate because these silly beams are running here on the ceiling. We had to build one pair of speakers inside these beams and another pair of speakers outside these beams. Considering that they are asymmetrical, we also had to work a bit here, but in the end, everything turned out well, and they beautifully play through the sound-transparent, starry sky, filling the entire listening area. There was a strong desire to show you one of the speakers, so let's go ahead and remove the grill from one of the half columns, and I'll show you how one white or surround speaker is arranged with a simple motion of the hand. Our panel is removable, and we gain access to the space behind it, where our surround reference surround is located. In this case, it is a wide channel. Next to it is the very absorbing material that I have already mentioned. And accordingly, this setup works. Moreover, look, everything here is arranged in such a way that it is maximally aligned with the center of the audience area both horizontally and vertically. And horizontally. Thus, this waveguide, which provides a 90 by 40 degrees coverage, is clearly stated here, and the manufacturer guarantees it, which we confirmed with our measurements. It covered the entire viewing and listening area with the dispersion of high-frequency sound. Here it is, the reference surround. Look at how substantial this speaker is. For comparison, all other surround channels are arranged in exactly the same way. They are also adjusted and optimized for the listening area using a laser level. As a result, this gives us a seamless sound experience, where objects move around you. You don't hear any gaps, no dropouts, and with Alcon's audio, this effect is achieved like never before compared to any other acoustic systems. Because this waveguide with this ribbon really plays from 1 kHz to 20,000 Hz with the stated dispersion of 90 by 40 degrees. This is the magic of Alcon's, my friends. Our discussion about the equipment inside the cinema hall is now complete. I suggest we move to the audience area and say a few words about the recliner seats. And in the audience area, friends, we have 10 STINGRAY recliner seats, which were specially designed and named once again in honor of this cinema hall. They represent the classic recliner chair with 2 electric motors. The first motor slightly lowers our seat like this, and then starts to move forward, lowering the backrest. And the second motor is classic, it's the footrest, or the so-called zarga. Fully reclining in this chair, you can comfortably take a nap. And if you lean back too much, there is also a manual headrest provided here. This is how we do it, and that's it. We are perfectly comfortable again. You can spend 2 to 3 hours like this without any strain. The chairs are made at our factory here in Russia, in the Moscow region. This model is available for order in any absolute finish. In this case, we have Alcantara, genuine Italian Alcantara. Everything is made from it. All elements of the chair upholstery, and even these white trims, which are part of the design, very carefully and elegantly emphasize the modern shapes of this chair. The filling is designed in such a way that it is not too soft, so it does not resemble ordinary standard soft furniture, but rather reminds you of the comfort of a car in which you can travel for hours without getting tired. Accordingly, there is support for the back and shoulders, and a slightly sporty seating position with side support. This chair is very cool and comfortable. This model, like all other chairs in the Blackroom, is made from my own design. I personally visit the factory to refine all elements, including, of course, comfort. As long as I am not feeling great and comfortable, this model will not proceed to the final upholstery with the final material. So here, as they say, I will fully take responsibility for the enjoyment, comfort, and leisure time in these wonderful, beautiful chairs. Well, accordingly, Alcantara is chosen in color. Here, it was chosen to match the design color and was made exactly as envisioned in the photo visualizations. We can manufacture such a furniture set for you in about a month and a half and deliver and install it turnkey in your home cinema. Therefore, if you have such a task, feel free to contact Blackroom and we will help you. We have 3 models that are installed in our showroom. You can come, touch them, sit in them, recline, and understand which one is right for you. Come visit us at our showroom. You can find all the necessary contacts, as always, in the description of this video. And now, I suggest we talk about electronics. And for this, let's move to the equipment room, which is located next to the cinema hall. And here, friends, we are in the technical room, which is located to the left of the screen when facing the screen. This area is approximately 5 square meters, and it is entirely dedicated to housing the equipment. Rack mount, 42 units, standard. And we open the front doors accordingly to our equipment. A minimalist set, network equipment, because all of this is managed and operates over a local network. These are 4 Alcon's audio amplifiers. Alcon's audio is not sold separately without amplifiers. This is a unified system. It is always a set of amplification and acoustic systems, and all of this operates within a single ecosystem with its own presets. Accordingly, 4 4-channel amplifiers with disc processors and digital inputs, and in general, this is all the most modern story. That's why we sometimes refer to Alcon's audio as working purely on acoustics. Our acoustic systems have separate subwoofers powered by 2 amplifiers located at the bottom of this rack, and there are also 2 similar 2-channel amplifiers at the rear of this rack. Thus, we have 8 channels of amplification for the subwoofers. Moving under the amplifiers, we have a DSV processor from BSS model Bluetooth 100 set up for the future. It is here so that in the future we can integrate a karaoke system into the available space and properly redirect the sound from the karaoke system directly to the amplifiers. To avoid any delay on the microphone, it will switch between the karaoke system and the cinema system, but it will be directly connected to the front amplifiers and subwoofers. While the client is not installing the karaoke system for now, we have already made all the necessary provisions for the future. Next is the RTI control system, XP6, and the audio-video processor from Trinoff Altitude 16. It is the number of channels that limits the maximum number of audio channels in Cinema Hall 914. This French processor, as you know, is top of the line. In the world, there is nothing perfect, only its older brother, Altitude 32. However, in this case, we decided to focus on it specifically because it addresses all the tasks that needed to be solved in this project. Below, we have a shelf with signal sources. This is an Apple TV, which is loved by all clients, and most of the content is purchased and watched there. And all the streaming is also done with Apple TV. And the universal network player, Zafidi 4K, about HDR for movies that you can obtain somewhere, put on a flash drive, or simply watch from a network storage device, accordingly in the highest quality. And accordingly, at the base of this rack, we have an uninterruptible power supply from FCI, which provides us with the reliability of the entire system's operation. And the uninterrupted power supply to the control units. So in case of any issues, we could turn off the system even if the entire house suddenly lost power. I forgot one small detail. Of course, from this room we ran 2 conduits directly into the cinema hall. One of them goes to the projector. If we suddenly want to change the projector, if a new HDMI standard appears and so on, we have the ability to run any new cable. And the second installation goes into the niche, with future signal sources such as PlayStation, which we can easily place in the hall and connect to this processor by running any number of necessary HDMI cables. All communications enter the rack from the back of the room, right below. They come out of the wall from a neat opening and connect to the equipment in the rack accordingly. And of course, everything here is cooled. There is a ducted ceiling air conditioner, cassette type, and it always operates to maintain the necessary temperature so that the equipment never overheats. Let's return to the cinema hall. Oh, what beauty! What beauty! All this beauty is controlled from a single remote based on an iPad mini, which is located right there at the entrance in a case, charging and always available to manage all the systems of the cinema hall. Lighting, audio, video, all sources, any content. After all the work on this cinema hall was completed, we unfortunately had to wait for several months. I have already lost count, whether it's 5 months or 4, but we couldn't finish all our work and therefore couldn't fine-tune and calibrate everything because the house was still under construction. And so, when that wonderful moment arrived, when the house was completed and cleaned and the ventilation system was launched, we began the final tuning and calibration of the audio and video systems. Accordingly, we spent about a week fine-tuning the control system to ensure everything was perfect, that everything functioned, switched, worked, and so on. Some small things there and so on. Then we proceeded to calibrate the video system. It took us about a day and a half. This was handled by our technical director, Daniel. Everything was done according to ISF standards. Accordingly, he fully calibrated in both HDR and SDR modes. And then we, along with our engineer Nikita, began the sound calibration. This process took us almost a full, and probably even more than, 4 working days. We started together, adjusted the acoustics, opened all the panels, and made all the physical tunings and settings that needed to be done in the best possible way. Only then did we proceed to various types of verifications and checks to ensure that everything is connected correctly, perfectly, with the right polarity, and so on. We have a whole list and a checklist for how we calibrate such cinema halls. Indeed, doing this in less than 3 days is practically impossible, especially when you have all the tools in the form of a training processor where you can tweak the sound for each little detail and adjust it on each of these 16 channels. The adjustments were made personally on the processor, and I can tell you that right now this is the best sound hall in Black One. Previously, our showroom had the best sound, but now it is the STINGRAY Cinema Hall. It couldn't be otherwise because the senior reference line from Alcon's Audio, with 8 15-inch subwoofers produced by us, knows its business and executes it brilliantly here. When you sit in the prime spot, you simply immerse yourself in what is happening on the screen. You can't believe you are in a 50 square meter room. It feels like you are right there with the characters in a huge hall, where everything is heard, every note of the bass, every tiny rustle. The sound is so detailed, it surrounds and envelops you so wonderfully that I ran out of words to describe it. Therefore, this hall is a reference for Blackroom and personally for me at the moment. We haven't done anything better so far, although we do have a number of projects currently in progress. I personally would definitely not refuse such a hall. And what I also like about the Trinov processor, besides the fact that it allows you to do anything, is that it also lets you set up the necessary number of sound presets. It was absolutely easy for me to achieve perfect sound for both the first row and the second. And with the press of a button on the iPad, we can watch movies perfectly, either from the first or the second row, depending on our mood. By the way, a few words about the budget. At current prices and exchange rates, the total budget for creating such a cinema hall will be approximately 30 million rubles. Is that a lot or a little? You might ask me. I think it's absolutely a little. For those emotions, for such a fabulous finish, for such a picture and sound, you should have just heard it, my friends. Unfortunately, it's practically impossible to convey all these emotions and sensations through a YouTube video. However, you have a great opportunity to experience this for yourself by simply visiting our demo room, which is located not far from Sokolniki. As usual, you will find all the contacts in the description of this video, and we plan to present this project next year at the International CEDIA Awards competition in a specific price category with a full-fledged cinema hall. And it is in this very competition that we are currently presenting our showroom, which has already reached the finals, and in just 2 weeks, the winners will be announced. I want to sincerely thank the client who collaborated with us on this wonderful project and allowed us to share it with all of you. If you, my friends, are currently involved in the construction or design of your home and also dream of having such a cinema hall, feel free to contact us. Blackroom is the leading specialist in creating real home theaters. By the way, we have recently become an international company, and we have opened a branch in Dubai. If you are building there, feel free to reach out. We will build a cinema hall just like that, or even better for you in Dubai. Like this video, as such halls rarely make it to YouTube. And we will definitely see each other in new videos, in new reviews, in new entertaining clips, in those things that are somehow related to the theme of home cinema and home cinema halls. This was Anton, the founder of Blackroom. See you soon in new videos. Goodbye, everyone.